Hello everyone, it's Marie from Skeletorama again. Welcome back to my channel. Give it a house shift. How's everybody doing? So I'm doing good. We are now on part 2 of our base and getting all the finishing and painting and all that kind of fun stuff so that we'll have a really cool looking base at the end. So without further ado, enjoy. Alright, so this has had more than enough time to dry and what we're going to do now is we're going to start building up on our base layer some more. So I took some acrylic paint. This is the Folk Art Burnt Umber color. It's a nice dark brown color, but it's not quite dark brown enough for me. So I finally got black acrylic paint. Oh, so put a little bit of that, a little more than I was planning to, put a little bit of that in there to darken it up a bit. And then some of the Prima Art Alchemy liquid acrylic and burnt sienna. Liquid acrylic's a more concentrated version of an acrylic. It's also transparent-ish, so it'll at least add some of that pigment in there with it. And then I put it in this cup here and I thinned it down with some water because that paint was like really thick. So I thinned it down with some water because I want it to be more of like a heavy wash, because I want it to get into all the little nooks and crannies. I don't want to start building up thick layers of paint and obscure all the detail. So we're going with a dark brown first. The cobblestones are going to be gray when we're at that point, but all the stuff between them we're going to have, you know, dirt and little rock bits and stuff like that. So I figured I'm going to go ahead and do it at dark brown, because if it shows dark brown under there, that's awesome. That works for me. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, just to make sure I have enough, because the chances of me getting the same color twice when I mix paint are very slim, I'm going to do the top first and then I'll do the sides, but I'll do the top on camera so that y'all can see. We've got the first coat on there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the edges around and then let this dry, and I will come back to you guys and we'll see how our texture is keeping up on the rocks. Maybe we want to add a little bit more, we'll see. But yeah, we'll see you guys back here in a few. Okay, so we are mostly dry. I can still see a little bit of shine in a couple of the deeper spots in here and here and here, which is fine because we're not really going to paint on those anyway. But what I also did was, and let me kind of, hopefully this will at least give some sort of a idea. I added a little bit more texture, but since you got to watch the super duper fun foil business, I figured I wouldn't make you even on fast forward sit through this. But what I did was I took this. This is a wire brush. You can get them at, you know, Home Depot, Harbor Freight. I think that's where I got mine. I think it was like $1 at Harbor Freight. They're cheap as heck, but it's got the brass bristles on it. And I use this and I just kind of smushed it in there, right? To add a little bit more texture and bring some of that texture back. It was still, you know, pretty much there, but I don't want to do all this work and then not have the texture that I want at the end of it, right? And that's really what this is all about, is layering and all that, and getting all these textures. And it does take a long time to add all this stuff, but the devil's in the details, right? And so those little details will really help sell what you're trying to pull off at any point. That being said, I'm not saying this is going to be perfect. We'll see. It should, hopefully it'll be okay. So what I'm going to do is, I think I will do the cobblestones first, because this, I'm not leaving it like this to put the grass on it. I do have something I'm going to do with that to add, to make it look like dirt, right? But I do want to get my cobblestone texture in here first and do a few other things, and then that dirt can go on kind of on the top at the end, because it would be much harder to try to, you know, paint these and get in the dark room. Anyway, you'll see, okay? So what I've got here is I have some different paints. So I have a bunch of different grays here in varying degrees. And then I have my black paint because these grays are nice. They didn't have any really dark gray when I was at the store, so I was kind of stuck with that. But you can mix with black and make it darker. And I'm going to be good and actually use my palette. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a really dark gray undercoat on the rocks. And I've got my brush here. And what I'm going to try to do is just gently go over them like this, because I want it on the cobblestones, but I don't really want it between them if I can avoid it. There will be other things we are doing with that, but for now, that's kind of what I was thinking. So let's see, this should be the darkest. It's medium gray. So we'll put some of this in here. And see, that's not terribly gray. This one here, let's see, I'm going to put this in one of the wells just in case it's not. Does this have a friggin' lid on it? Really? Oh, I hate when they do that. Have me sitting there squeezing it for 6 hours going, what the hell? Okay, so this is pretty much almost exactly like that. So we won't even mess with that. And then I do want a little bit of black in here as well. And that way I can take these two and I can kind of blend them over here, and let me kind of adjust the white balance yet again. And then I will start mixing these and let's see what it looks like. And normally I would just take the brush and mix them, but since I'm wanting to do more of a dry brushing technique, I really don't want to even accidentally overload my brush with paint so that it glops in and gets all in between here. So I'm gonna use my palette knife. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to bring a little bit of the black over, and I'm going to start mixing it up, because a little bit goes a long way until I get it to the color that I want. Okay, that actually worked out pretty good. That's pretty much where I was going right from the get-go. So yeah, as you can see, it didn't take much of that at all. But we will come up with a use for that. Don't worry, I'm not going to waste it. So with this now, I'm going to get these paints out of the way. Definitely don't have a ton of clearance on my desk at the moment because this thing's rather large. So I'm just going to kind of take this and just take a little bit of paint, and I'm just going to kind of brush over this gently. Okay, and so the goal is I want to highlight the rocks but not get in between them. So we've also got something to give us some contrast between them. And there's me getting too much paint on it. See, I told you I'd do that. All right, so I'm going to put on fast forward and I'm going to go over this. I'm going to, I think, change the white balance so that you can see this part, because that's a little more important than seeing the palette. And then my apologies if it's going to glare like crazy, but So now we're starting to see the difference between the stones and, you know, what will be the dirt and everything. So just like in real nature or real cobblestone path, all of these aren't going to be the same color, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this really dark gray, I'm going to add just a tiny bit more black to it and make it like really, really dark. And then I'm going to try not to have my paint loaded that much on the brush. I'm just going to pick out some individual rocks and I'm going to do the tops of them in this darker one. And I'm going to do this in several different colors throughout, just to give it a little bit of variation, because of course, you know, you wouldn't have a cobblestone path where all the cobblestones were exactly the same color unless you had like stupid lottery money or something, you know, where you could afford to have somebody sit there and pick them all out for you because you got mental issues, who knows. But anyway, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do some random ones here and then we'll add some more colors, change that color, and continue making the random stuff before we do any of the passes with the dry brushing and the lighter colors. So this way it'll stay underneath and you'll still see the difference. Okay, so I think I will stop with the darker ones there. And let's see, I can probably sit that there without too much of an issue. Kind of wipe my brush off a little bit. I'm going to take the lighter gray and throw some of that in there. Which, of course, being around all this other stuff will darken it up, but as long as it's a different color than, you know, the surrounding stuff, it's all that really matters. Looks suspiciously like the gray we started with, doesn't it? Okay. No, I need to get my brush not quite that loaded with paint, because I will lose all the detail if I leave that in there. Okay, there we go. And then we'll just start pulling more paint in and just changing it and doing a bunch of different colors, because we're going to go over this. So, yeah, it'll definitely be very different when we're done. So. So I'm going to go clean this mess up here and I'll be right back, and then we will, this should have dried hopefully by then, we will do another dry brush on top of it. Okay, so these should be good enough for us to go over. There's a couple little wet spots. By the time we get over there, that should be dry. So I have taken and put on my little palette here the medium gray. So I'm going to start with the medium gray and we're going to work lighter. So this step though needs to be a little more of a true dry brush. Okay, I'm just going to kind of set this stuff over here because I have no room. Okay, so I'm just going to get, I've moved up to a larger brush with denser bristles. I get a little bit on there and then I'm going to brush it off on here. Okay, because I want it to have hardly any paint at all. And then I'm going to start going over these like so. Okay, so let's get a bunch out this way just to make it easier for me at some point. Okay, and then just very gently brush over. What this does is this catches all the edges of things and brings out all the highlights of all that texture that we did. And as tempting as it is to go, oh, I can just put a little bit of paint on it, just don't. Just don't. Trust me. You can't. So God knows I can't. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over all these with this. Okay, so there's that one. So now we're going to move up one shade lighter. And that will be the classic French gray. And then while I was doing that, I had a fighter jet go overhead very low and quick, which makes it very, very loud. So I may include that sound in there just so you can hear it, how insane it is. Okay, so now we've got this lighter color. Don't worry, we're going to get back some of our low lights, you know, when we do the wash at the end. But again, the lighter you go, the lighter hand you're going to use, and the more you're going to make sure you've wiped this thing off correctly, right? Because there was a couple spots, and this is throwing me because I'm like, oh dear God, I just did it. It's like, no, you painted that, stupid. Oh no. Okay. Okay, and then our final coat will be our lightest, which is the pale gray. And this is going to be very, very, very little because it's almost a white. And with this one, we're going to make very, very sure that we're using a very, very, very dry brush. So now we've got all that part there done. Yeah, the only one that you really kind of lose some of the contrast in are these really bright ones, but those will tone down once we get the wash on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do should do a dark brown. I think I'll do a dark brown wash on it. So what it's going to be is, well, I'll show you here in a second. Be right back. Okay, so we are going to make a wash for this. So what I've got here is a plastic cup, a little bit of water. And some of the different people, like Stetson Studio, had a really good breakdown of it on his. But basically, it's like 95% water, 5% paint, whatever, and a couple drops of dish soap. So I'm going to use some of the liquid acrylic in the burnt sienna for this because it's nice and dark. And one little drop of black. Let's see how successful I am this time, shall we? Okay, well, marginally successful. That's fine. So what you do is you take this and you stir this up, and this is a very, very, very diluted mixture. But what it does is it allows the stuff to get into the cracks and bring back some of your texture as well. And the reason you use the dish soap is the dish soap will keep the surface tension of the water from interfering with that, so it helps it flow a lot better. You can also use like Pledge floor polish type stuff. I haven't used that, so I'm not gonna say to do that. And then I've got my paper towel handy so that if I need to, I can dab some of it up. Let's see. Let's make sure it's unlike the other stuff where I had like a big blob of color at the bottom. I don't want that. Okay. And you're just going to take it and you're just going to go over it. See how it kind of goes into those cracks? And you're just going to let it sit. You're going to let it pool up wherever it pools up. because that's what's going to give you your, contrasts and things. And I think we might go a little bit darker on this. So let's see. So a little bit of that up. I'll put a little bit more black in here. Which one is that? That's burnt umber. Nope. We can do a little bit more black than we had. It's not quite contrasty enough for me. But yeah, you just kind of experiment until you get it the shade that you want it. The key is you want it very, very, very watered down. You can also use, there's a lot of different companies. Tamiya makes some of them. I think they're called panel line colors or something that are designed to do this. Citadel, for any of the model making people, they make a line of stuff just for this as well. But you can make your own, and there we go. That's much better, and not have to pay as much for it. But yeah, we're just going to cover this whole thing. Okay, so now we're going to leave this to dry, and this will take a little bit because I've got plenty of it in there. It's in all the cracks. It will kind of lighten as it dries, but as you can see, these ones here that had lost their texture by being, as light as they were, this just brought that right back, because now this is sitting in all the little bits that we gave it with the wire brush and the foil and all that stuff. And you can always, dab a little bit extra where you want it. But okay, so I'm going to leave this the hell alone. I'll come back to you guys when it's dry and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I've brought the camera way in close, and wow, these shadows are even worse when you're way close. Anyway, so that y'all can see what we're going to do here. We've got our cobblestones, and see how the dry brushing has really brought out that texture that we put in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill in all of these little cracks and crevices with basically smaller dirt, right? So what I'll be using is this. This is Woodland Scenic's Fine Ballast. See how it looks kind of like a really fine gravel texture. So people use this for like model railroads to do the gravel that's around the railroad tracks and things. So I'm going to use that. And I've put it in one of these, which is like a little shaker thing, like you would put spices in. I gotten a bunch of these from Amazon once when I got a bunch of spices from this really good spice place, but they all came in a bag. And I don't know about you, but using spices out of a bag is kind of weird. But anyway, so I got those for it, and I had an extra one. And I thought, oh, that'd be a good idea, because that's how they send you the big thing of some of the flocking comes in that. And I thought, oh, that's genius, because you can just shake it on there. I'm not going to shake it on there, but I could if I want to. So how I'm going to attach that first is I'm going to use matte Mod Podge. So I've got my matte Mod Podge here, and I've got a paintbrush. And so I'm going to take the paintbrush, I'm going to paint the Mod Podge in between all these little cracks, trying to really avoid the rocks themselves. And I'll do a section at a time so that the Mod Podge doesn't dry out. But I'll do that, and then we'll put some of the ballast in there, and then I've got another dry paintbrush here, so we can kind of get it off of the rocks, and then we'll let that dry. So I'll do a small section on camera and fast forward, and then obviously when I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and finish the rest of it, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll get back to you for the second part of it, which is making the stuff stick down really good. So enjoy. as you saw, I kind of went in there with the glue, and then when I had the extra, I tried to, brush it over there first before I added more to it. But so I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to finish the rest of this, and then I'll let it sit and dry, and then I'll tap off the extra of it, because there'll be plenty, or at least brush off the extra before we use Scenic Cement basically to hold it down. So I'll be back with you guys when I've got all of this done. See you in a few. Alrighty, so now we have our cobblestone path, and I'll bring this up a little bit closer. You can see there's still a bunch of, of the ballast is like all over the place. But that's fine. It's not going to hurry things. So now what we want to do is we want to take this stuff and we want to really stick it down. In order to, get this stuff off the rocks quite a bit, I had to be pretty aggressive when I brushed it. So some of those areas that were real deep don't have as much stuff. We can go back in and fix that later. But what we're going to do for now is we are going to get this stuff stuck down. So what you do, and super huge thank you to Adam from North of the Border, because he actually explained this. I've seen people do it when I've watched videos and stuff where they're spraying stuff on and dripping stuff on. You're like, the hell is that? So there's two things that you want to use for this kind of stuff. We'll do it for the grass as well, but you're going to use isopropyl alcohol. So that's what's in here. And you're going to use, basically I did homemade Scenic Cement, right? So what this is this is half Mod Podge, half water, a couple drops of dish soap. The dish soap in here and the isopropyl alcohol both serve the same kind of function. So what they're going to do is they're going to break up that whole surface tension of water thing, right? And that will keep you, and he's got one of his videos that he did, he actually demonstrates what it looks like if you use this and if you don't use this. And when you don't use it, the water kind of beads up, it has trouble getting down in there, it moves your material around. When you use this on there, it allows this stuff to penetrate all the way down in there without moving stuff, which is perfect and exactly what we want. So I'm going to do, like before, a little small section of stuff. And so I'm going to kind of saturate it pretty good with isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, let's try aiming not for me. And then I'm going to take this stuff, I've got it in a little dropper bottle, and I'm just going to drop it where I want it in here. See how it kind of goes right in there? So that way I'm only going to stick this stuff down where I want to. I'm not going to stick it on the rocks. I'm just going to get my bits of my path. So, and it's just, yeah, it goes right in there. You can see it absorbing right in there, which is exactly what I want it to do. And once it does that, then I can really aggressively, go over this with a brush to get all the extra out. But yeah, so in the meantime, that's what I'm going to do. And as you can see, this is going to take a minute. So yeah, I'll be back with you guys when I'm done with this. I'll put this leaves on fast forward for a minute, I guess. So this stuff has had a chance to dry, and then some, because again, of course, it went into the work week, so I had to stop for a while. But so as you can see, the stuff that put between there is good, and it is rock solid. It's not going anywhere, and that was thanks to the combination of the alcohol and the watered down PVA stuff, or Mod Podge, whichever one I used. I've already forgotten. So now what we want to do, this looks a little too much like sand, because it kind of is sand. I just want to kind of tone it down. So I've made sort of a brown wash, got a little tiny bit of black, but it's some really super thin down brown, and I'm going to use it the same way I did with the stones with the black wash. So we're just going to kind of go over everything and just put it on nice and heavy, and then let it get into all the nooks and crannies. And once it dries, it should you know, tone down the stuff between the rocks as well. So we are just going to leave that, let that dry. I am going to deal with this, and then I will be back and we can do the next part, because luckily the next part we don't have to wait for it to dry, because we're going to put the dirt texture onto these sides here. Okay, so now to do the ground texture for it as a base to put our grass and everything. I have a couple different options. Of course, I have the same ballast that I use between here, but it's really fine. I also have these. These are called mini art stones, and they're done by Prima Finnabair, and they're used for texture. It's not, you know, we're not going to build a huge hill, so I'm not going to use the whole thing, but I thought these would work out pretty good. They also do make a medium and a large, and these are some kind of byproduct of making glass or something. It's where they get these, so they're super duper lightweight. But I figure we can use this. And we'll use a little bit of ballast that was in here from when I was like, I wonder if I can color it with alcohol ink. Well, you can, but it doesn't look right if you don't have the right color of alcohol ink. So there you go. So I think we'll take some of that and we'll put these in here. And again, it doesn't matter what color these are, because we're going to paint over it, we're going to put grass over it, all that good stuff. So I do just a little bit at first, because I'm really not sure how much I'm going to end up needing, you know, when all is said and done with this. So we'll do this. And since we're going to end up painting it, I am still going to go ahead and use my brown Mod Podge stuff from earlier and mix it into that, because it's already colored. And that way, if this ends up being not even remotely enough of the ground cover, then, you know, at least I know it's going to end up being the same color, right? Just kind of stir these around in here, get them all mixed up until it's a nice thick paste. The nice thing about the brown Mod Podge is it'll, you know, help color those stones as well, so they won't look quite as weird. So I think, I don't know that I can really do that well with the spatula. I will probably mess that up. So I will use one of the brushes that I normally use for glue, which is why it's very not flexible anymore. And I'm just going to kind of paint these on here. I'm just adding basically that dirt texture, and I'm going to have it kind of bunched up a bit around where the path is here, blending into that, and then just kind of spread it over the rest of it. So let's see how much that ends up needing. So there is the first half. So the answer was that stuff was about enough to do half. So now I know I'll just mix up about the same amount. Flip this around. And do this side. Okay, so now we have our beginnings of our dirt on. You can use a lot of different things for it. I used Mod Podge, you can use modeling paste, you can use the gel, you can use all sorts of different things. This is going to dry clear. It's got a little bit of the color in it from the paint, but it's going to dry clear. So this is going to look really weird as soon as it's dry, but it's okay because we have paint and we can make it better. But at least this way it gets the stuff on there and starts getting our dirt texture in there. So once that dries and everything's completely dry, I will come back to you and then we will paint this and we'll add the green stuff, which is like the best part. So see you guys back in a bit. Okay, so this has obviously been allowed to dry now. And like I said, since the Mod Podge was clear, all this stuff is turning up more white. So it looks like a horrific accident at the Rice Krispies plant or something. So we're going to paint this because that's ridiculous, right? So I have here my little palette and I have some dark brown and some medium brown that I'd added a little bit of black to. I have some makeup sponges because I don't want to brush it on, I want to sponge it on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my little sponge here and I'm going to get not that much, a decent amount on it, load it up. I'm just going to kind of go across this. I'm going to do like a mottled coverage of it because I want some variety in the color. And I did check ahead of time and miraculously I was able to find some green paint for the next step that didn't have metallic in it, which I thought was amazing. So I'm going to go along and sponge that on there. So I'm going to get towards the center a little bit more so you can see better. Okay, and see it's covering the white bits up and giving it more of that dirt kind of mud look to it. So I'm going to go along and fast forward and do that, and then I'll start going along with the lighter brown. I'm not going to wait for it to dry between so that it'll kind of blend, because you know, wet on wet will blend, whereas wet on dry will layer, and I kind of want it to blend a bit, so that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so now it looks a little less hot mess and a little more like dirt. And then when you have any kind of 3D, you know, of course, elements that you're painting, you do want to look at it from different angles. So that way I can see from this angle, oh, I've kind of missed this spot over here, and I missed this a little bit over here, and I can make sure that we don't have any of those really, you know, oddly white bits left. Okay, so I'm going to let that part dry before we do the green for where the grass is going to go. And so what I was thinking is I got these smaller ones, is maybe kind of going in here a little bit with some of it too, because I'm going to be putting some of the fake grass and stuff in here. So let's just kind of, we'll take a little corner of it and see how it looks before I commit. See if I can aim it correctly. The answer to that would be no. Let's see, maybe if I make this smaller. Thinner or something. I don't know why I'm just getting all these god-awful shadows all of a sudden. I thought I had all that crap fixed. Let's see. Maybe that'll work. So I cut it into kind of like a little point to hopefully kind of help me stay in the lines a bit, you know. Well, let's see, because again, we're going to cover it with the little fake grass, but you would expect it to be, you know, kind of dirt colored where the grass is going to be. So maybe a little bit of it in here too would be kind of cool if I could stop hitting the frickin' rocks. Okay. I'm going to go through and do a little bit of that here and there while this dries. And this way I can also kind of pre-plan my route of where I want to put the little bits of grass coming through, because I don't want it on all of it. Just kind of here and there in parts. You know, and since we've got this, obviously this is the dirt, this is the path, you would expect a lot of the areas coming off of this to be where you're going to end up having your grass too. So yeah, I'm pretending like I have a plan. That's cute. So that should probably do it. Yeah, I started off trying to do it kind of patchy, and I thought, you know, I'm sure that the grass would kind of follow, you know, kind of like tree roots will do or something. So that's kind of where I went with that. So we're gonna let this dry completely, and then we'll come back and do the next step, which will be green under here, because when you put any of the stuff on there, you want, if there's gaps between it, to be able to see some other color underneath it, so it looks, you know, it doesn't look like there's as much of a gap or whatever. So anyways, I will see you guys back here in just a few minutes. So now this is dried. Even though this looks really shiny, what I had done is I had put a little bit of thinned down liquid acrylic on top of it to give it a couple little darker spots. And I'm sitting there waiting forever for it to dry, going, what the heck? It was already dry. It's just, this is how it dries. Like, oh, okay, cool. So this is some cheapo paint. God only knows where I got this, but in green. It's the only non-metallic green that I had. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over these with the green to kind of denote where the grass is going to be, which is pretty much everywhere. But I'm going to try not to do it too terribly thick on here, because I still want to see some of the other, you know, the brown through it. So with this, what I did is these are both the same paint. I just added a tiny bit of black to that one to kind of give me an extra, a darker version of it, which is a great way to do that. If you know, only have the one shade, you can always make your own shades. So I'm going to do the same thing, going over this, and this is just a makeup sponge. But the nice thing with having all this texture stuff here, you know, even though I do have the flocking stuff and whatever for the grass, I could do all my grass like this and it would look just fine. Well, I mean, I'd have to do much much more thorough job of it than I'm about to do, but you know, having that texture on there really allows it to look like grass. So I'm going to go along and do both sides in the darker color, and then same as I did with the other one, I'm going to go do some highlights in a lighter color. And then I have my other sponge where I've got it cut down to a little tip, and then I'm gonna hit these ones too. So that way when we put the grass on, it's not so vital that it, you know, be complete thorough coverage, because what it'll show through is either going to be dirt or grass. So, which I'm fine with either way. That should, in theory, do it for the paint. So again, I'll wait for the paint dry, but then the next part is we're going to put the actual turf and stuff on here. So, and the nice thing is if I go over any of the rocks, because I totally did, it's moss. It's free moss. So yeah, there we go. So I'll be back with you guys in a minute. All right, so our paint is dry, and yes, it does look a little neon and weird right now. See? But that's, you know, mainly due to the fact that I only went over it in 2 different colors, and I'm planning on covering it. So otherwise I would have done more colors, and then I would have done a dark wash on it to kind of tone it back to where this is, that sort of thing. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add some fake grass business, right? So I'm going to use the first Woodland Scenics Fine Turf in green, and I have it in one of these little spice jar things, so I can put it on the shaker thing and I can shake it out. We're going to apply that the same way we did the other stuff. I'm going to use the Mod Podge. So I think what I'll do is I'll do these inside bits first, because they're going to be the most fussy, and then I'll do these outside bits. I think that's what I'm going to do. So what we'll do is we'll do that, we'll apply that, and then we're going to go over it with the isopropyl alcohol and the Scenic Cement. And then once that's fully dried, we will then add the coarse turf. So this is a little bit thicker flocking, looks more like, you know, little clumps of grass versus very, very fine. You can also get the static grass for this, but it's only going to really stand up like grass if you have the applicator, which is like $60. So, and I don't have that. So I thought, you know, because I use that on the, I've gotten that with other dollhouse kits, and when you put it down flat, yeah, it looks like crap. So at least when I do it. So anyways, I get myself a small paintbrush and I'm going to start going over pretty much anywhere I've put the green and kind of a little bit, you know, into it, and we're gonna put that on there. Now you can also take this and you can mix this with Mod Podge and make kind of a moss sort of thing if you're doing like on buildings and stuff. Yeah, I didn't want to go there on this one just because I would have to do so much. So anyways, let's get going on it. Alright, so I've gotten it in all the cracks, and yes, it was very fussy. But now, luckily, it'll go a little bit faster. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take my piece of paper, I'm going to put it under here. I've got this, you can't see it very good, but here, let me scoot this. And you'll probably start hearing some big old thunder fairly soon, but, so basically I've got this under here like so. And so I'm going to do a bit at a time, and I'm going to just brush this with the Mod Podge and put it on there. So this should go a lot faster. Okay, so I've got a decent layer of Mod Podge on there now. And so now I'm going to take it and see, here's where the shaker top really comes in handy. It was a dark and stormy night. No, so anyways, I've got all of my stuff on here with our big old thunderstorm going on in the background again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry before I go to tip it over and get the excess off, just because I don't want to leave any empty spots. I'm going to have to figure out what I have that's big enough to do that in. So wish me luck on that. But yeah, so I will join you guys back once this is dry, and then I'll tip it off, brush the extra off, we'll take a look at it, and then we'll probably do the Scenic Cement stuff again. So yay! Alright, so here we are. It has dried and I knocked off as much of the extra as I can. And as you can see now, it's starting to look a little more like a path type thing. So now what we're going to need to do, same thing that we did with this stuff in here, is use the Scenic Cement. So of course you're going to prep it with the isopropyl alcohol, and then this is watered down Mod Podge, I think it was. Whatever I said it was at that first part, it's the same stuff. Has a little tiny bit of dish soap to it to help it get into the cracks and crevices and all this stuff. But this will really keep this stuff from, you know, shedding all over the place. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I'll let you watch a little bit of it, and then I'll probably skip off. And then once it's completely dry, then we will go through and add the next color of stuff. Because you see where we've got a little bit of paint stuff here. That could definitely use covering up with the other color. So we will get to do that here in a few minutes. All right, so in theory, that's all of it. So just like with the stuff in here, this will be set up here to dry completely. Not sure exactly how long it'll take. And then I think when we go to do the other stuff, which will be the more coarse ground turf, I may do this where you mix it with the glue and then put it on like with a spatula or a paintbrush or whatever. And the nice thing about that is you don't have to mess with the Scenic Cement. But this should keep this all in place. It's not going to shed, and even though it looks ridiculously colored right now, it will dry clear. So it won't look like this when it's done. So, okay, see you guys back whenever this is dry. Okay, so this has dried, and as you can see, it's not that crazy light green that it was when last we saw it. So there are a couple spots you'll notice are lighter. That's where when I had put the Mod Podge on to stick stuff down, of course I kind of missed it a little bit, and so it was missing the finer stuff. So I put a little bit of glue on there, and I put some of the stuff on there to fill those in. So they're going to be a slightly different color until we go over it with the Scenic Cement stuff as well. And in looking at the stuff we're going to use now, so this is the, what is it called here? This is the coarse turf. And this is made with like this unruly kind of spongy material. It doesn't really want to do what you want it to do most of the time. So I kind of experimented right here, and I'll show you. Can you even see it? No, of course not. All right here. So I just sprinkled it on, right? So I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to kind of sprinkle it on, because I know if I mix it with the glue stuff, you know, it's going to be globby, of course, and then I'm going to have to come up with some kind of pattern so it doesn't look weird. If I sprinkle it on, I think it'll look better, honestly. So I'm going to sprinkle that on. In here, I'll probably do some of the PVA glue so that I can get it in specific spots, or use my tweezers or something. And then once it's all spread out, then we will have to go along with, of course, the isopropyl alcohol and the Scenic Cement and lock it down a further time. But I also got, from my stash of extra dollhouse supplies, so I've got this. So this is a red version of basically the same thing, but this looks like little flowers. So I may be taking the tweezers and kind of putting these sporadically, because you would expect flowers on here, right? And I've also got these two different kinds of flowers that they use, the dried flowers. So I may, say, pull some of the stuff off here as well. I don't know, we'll see. So first we're gonna do the grass. And so I am just gonna sprinkle it on and then figure out how I wanna do it for here. But either way, I'm gonna put y'all on fast forward for that. Okay, so as you can see, I figured out fairly quickly that yes, the nice light little sprinkles were all right, but it looked kind of weird, and it really needed a little bit more. So I put a lot more on. And then in here, I pretty much concentrated on areas where I didn't like the paint, where it had the little extra green bit or something like that, which I may add a little bit more. So now I think I'm going to add the flower stuff to it too, so we can glue everything down in one shot. So these right here, it's these little dried flower kind of things, right? So if you do any of the dollhouse kits, they always include these as the flowers. So what I did was I took the ones that are purple and I separated them from their stems. So I am going to kind of take the tweezers and maybe, you know, put a few of them kind of in this stuff, and then I'll sort of sprinkle them everywhere else. But so I'm going to start with the purple ones, because I figured those red ones were a little too garish. So probably be better off with the purple. Okay, so not sure how well you can see it. Let me change my lighting so that it's more on this. Okay, you may be able to see a little bit better. I can see them because they're very, very, very small. So now I think I might look at some of the others. Okay, and then these ones are the other kinds that you always get with these kits, and they're a bit larger. So these ones I definitely would use tweezers with. So I've got some hot pink and some light pink, so I think I'm going to pull some of those off, put them in my little tray, be right back with you. And these ones you definitely, yeah, you want to put them with tweezers because they're going to be much larger. Okay, so I have taken some of these out, and some of them even still may be a little large because it's kind of hard to completely separate them into singles. Obviously it can be done, but so what I'll do is I'll just take a couple of these kind of here and there and just sort of place them down where I want them. And then of course this other thing about this coarse turf stuff is it's like this really light kind of foam thing, and yeah, don't breathe on it too hard or you know it's gonna go flying. So yeah, I'm just gonna I'll drop a few of these here and there. You know, if I can grab any of them. Alright, so that's about as good as I'm going to get, I think, there with the randomness. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part here, which is, you know, super fun. I'll do kind of like this little middle part so you can see. It's just going to be the same as the other one. But, oh yeah, that's what I was curious if that was going to happen. So the answer is yes, yes it does. So as soon as I fix this, I tried to do it from up high, but I didn't do it up high enough. All right. No, that's not going to work. Okay, so we'll just have to forego the alcohol part. We can catch that on the second part of gluing it down. So yeah, for now, I'm just going to drop glue all over all this stuff. So once again, we have put a bunch of glue on stuff. And hopefully you noticed, I mean, aside obviously from the alcohol spray making it move, which I had a feeling it was going to do that, but I was hoping maybe if I was far enough away it wouldn't. Yeah, no. But when I was putting this on there without this, you know, the stuff moves now. It doesn't move as much the other way. So anyway, so we're going to let this dry. Again, it's probably going to take a while, and then we will come back to it, and it won't be this, you know, obviously crazy green. And then we'll kind of see where we are, but in theory, hopefully, that'll be good. So anyways, I will join you guys back once again. Okay, so the glue has dried, and now this is not some crazy weird color. This actually looks more like turf. I'll bring it up a little bit closer so you can see it. And then I have the base here. I'll sit on the base to show you. I can't really get it all the way in camera very well, but as you can see, there's a bit of a, you know, a lip around it, a border, so that either the wood or plexiglass or whatever is going to end up being on there will have room. And we are pretty much done. There are other things that will be added. So for example, I've got these. These are little grass bits, and they got sticky business on them, and you stick them down. I don't want to do these yet because I still have to do the trees and whatever kind of flower stuff I want to do here, or mushrooms, whatever, and place the chairs and stuff. So I want to wait until everything is in place before I start adding these, because I promise I will put them in entirely the wrong place if I add them now. So we are going to wait on those. There's also the matter of the edge, which looks oh so attractive. I do have an idea for that. I am not going to do it in this video because this thing has taken a really long time. So it's taken about, like 2-3 weeks, something like that, to do this. Just because A, I really can only do this on the weekends, and B, there's so much drying time stuff. Every layer that we added, we had to let it dry and let it dry. And with the Scenic Cement, it's pretty much overnight that you're going to be letting it dry. Because I came out and checked it hours later and it was still wet, but now it's not. So let's see it with our table, shall we? All right, there we go. So let's see, how can I do this without dropping it? So, ta-da! That's about as good of a view as I can give you, unfortunately, without having the camera way. I tried to get the camera way up there so you could see the whole thing, and it was just not cooperating with me at all. It kept going all weird on me. So anyways, this is it in the table. So this looks a lot more like an Alice in Wonderland scene now, instead of just a rando table and a rando piece of wood and some pink foam. So anyways, I will be back much faster than I was the last time, and thank you for being patient and waiting. And I even had a couple people ask if I was okay. I am okay. It's just, yeah, it's really hard to do full-time job and something this fiddly, because this is very fiddly, but it is totally worth it, because you know what, our rocks, they look like rocks. The snozzberries taste like snozzberries. No, seriously though, this started as that. So I think we did a pretty decent job on it. So next time, I will do, probably not in the next video, and I'll show you why in a second, but I do have a really different idea for what to do with this edge. I was going to make it kind of like dirt, like you're looking at the dirt edge on. I was like, then okay, maybe I'll put grass. But then I came up with an idea. So we will try that, and please, I hope it works, because I don't want to do this again. So anyway, next coming up will be from the package that I got from a certain Bentley House Minis, and this is the cutest sticker ever. I have to figure out where I want to put this, because I don't want to lose it, because it is so ridiculously cute. We have her chairs. Let me fix my lighting here. Ta-da! She came out with that chair kit in the interim. So I will be doing this. Each kit makes 2 chairs for the 1/12 scale, and she has her wonderful directions again. And so I will be doing these in 2, I think, very different finishes, so that we can kind of maximize, the chairs being different and everything. And since she actually does math and architecture stuff, I know hers will be in scale, so I can make sure mine match, because that'll be good. At some point down the road, however, I did get the cabinet for the kitchen that matches the retro stove. There's still an ice box left to get, but yeah, I'll be doing this at some point, but this is a little bit on the back burner for it. So fixing our lighting back to Sanityville for not having a big white thing in front of a big dark thing. There we go, get the table back in there. And voila. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I only did 2 parts. How is it that I did something this complex in 2 parts and a box took me 3? I don't know, who knows, but it is what it is. And I definitely like to leave all the steps in, and I tried to fast forward as fast as I could fast forward without making it nauseous. But yeah, anyways, I will see you guys in the next one then. Hej med reschiff. Bye!